And here we are. We are live. Thank you again for joining us tonight. Very special guest, as always. Perch is with us again. And it's been probably like a month or more, but things have been busy. It's been a very hectic time. A lot has changed since the last time you're on, dude. It's been
A
been a
lot's changed. Yeah, it's a lot's amplified. It has been a very strange month in comics, and well, sort of. I guess I should always preface this by saying the online world is very strange. It's very things have amplified. Things have gone a lot further. In the shop, it's not life as normal. Some things are changing, but they're different things, and I think that's what we're going to get into tonight.
Yeah, exactly. Because I was wondering, I wanted to try to do a stream before things came up, and of course, but
Mhm.
also upside about postponing some certain things, you get to look at it a little further. It's like you don't have the haze, or maybe even the kind of the haze of time, or you want to call it the kind of the gloss of it. With Free Comic Book Day this year,
Yeah.
having Infinity War, the biggest thing ever. How much did that impact? I know like a lot of people are like, oh, Free Comic Day wouldn't have to exist if people were like, it is a marketing tool. When people talk about the whole, well, if the writers and artists, they treated more people with respect, we wouldn't have to have Free Comic Day. For every 100 you get in to come in for Free Comic Day to pick up free stuff, you maybe keep what, about 10? Is that about a good,
Like
like,
that. It's small. I think the thing you're trying to do. So, Free Comic Book Day is I think, as I said online, it was interesting to see the battle that played out over it. But it's pure marketing. Your goal is to remind people that there are comics by giving them something for free. It's not unlike any other. Movie theaters in our area will do a free movie day, or restaurants will do a try an entree for buy one get one free day. It's all the same. You're trying to get new people in.
mhm.
Um, a lot of the people that come by are not comic fans. They're just interested in something free. They happen to be walking by. They see the word free. They come in. Or they're kids who heard about this from school. There is a lot more. There is a little bit more marketing in a positive way going into the schools, where whether it's with a newsletter or local events that the schools or the district starts to do, there's more of a promoting the Free Comic Day. So the kids come in, and it's always funny to me because no matter what you're there to do, you've got a lot of comic fans, but kids are probably the biggest audience you're going to attract in that day, at least in this area. And this is generally what I see on Facebook forums and other places. That's the new group you're bringing. Your hope is to hook them with something that appeals to them. It's going to appeal to the parents. It's going to remind them of kind of the parents when they were kids and they used to pick up comics. So you want to have that nice entry into books, but it's maybe 10%, I would say, come back.
Yeah.
You do get a lot of purchases of people who you get the traditional comic fans who see it as their moment in the year to come and buy something expensive to support the shop, which is always nice. You see maybe lapsed fans coming in to complain about things have only gotten worse since I stopped buying. That's always true. And then you have, I said, you have some kids. You have some this year. You hit on it. We've got Infinity War out, and so you've got a lot of attention on comics. But kind of a perspective I haven't said before on Twitter, I'll say it here, is that what's interesting with the movie audience. I said for a while that movie audience should be a crossover audience to comics, but it's not. Um, but it is getting the recognition of comics out there, and that's a good thing. But what I saw this year for the first time, and people coming in on Free Comic Day and people coming in after Infinity War, is there's almost this belief from the moviegoers, non-comic book fans, that the movies came first, and the comics are kind of like adaptions of the movies, which is a very weird perspective, and it's hard for my brain to kind of digest that anybody actually thinks that way. But we had fans come in saying, hey, the movies are really where it's at, and the comics are kind of the filler around the movies. That's a perspective that I think a lot of people have kind of worried about, and
Mhm.
it's starting to actually take hold a little bit. That the comics are kind of there to, as kind of the merchandise add-ons to the movie, and that's disappointing. That's not what I think we wanted to have happen. It's not what I wanted to happen, but it is this thought process that's kind of starting to settle in people's minds. And And, part of the reason for that is the comic books are just not, the current comic books are not compelling to the movies or attached to the movies in any real way. Deadpool ended this. If you went to watch Deadpool 2 and you went to the comic shop, buy me the newest issue of Deadpool, you get the final issue of a series where he kind of reboots his head because he was a sleeper Hydra agent at one time and was trying to kill himself. That's just confusing. That does not sync. So what you wind up doing is pointing fans to comics that are 10 or 20 years old and selling trades or selling back issues and kind of doing it that way. But that, the customer that buys that, and there's several that have, then walk out of the store and, what's the motivation to come back? They come back if they want another trade. They don't come back for the monthly. So it's an odd time. I don't get Marvel's strategy with the movies. It is almost, I do somewhere in that Marvel Corporation. I wonder if there's people deliberately saying, let's see if we can do the exact opposite of the movie as much as we can. I don't know. It's very confusing.
That right there is a problem, though, because like you said, the corporate synergy, considering this is, they've been under Disney for quite a while now, and usually Disney lets them do their own thing for a bit unless they want, unlike somebody like EA, where EA would buy all these other video game producers, and then they would just, okay, we'll let you do your thing until you screw up or something doesn't sell that well, and then we'll just cannibalize everything that you have. And then, that's basically what EA would do. So I'm surprised Disney hasn't done something similar, but they're, they usually leave their stuff alone. Like, they'll let Pixar do their thing, they'll let this do their thing, let Marvel do their thing, all that stuff until, they start bombing or they have issues with, too many, complaints, too many cages are being rattled. Okay, let's go ahead and restructure, and there's people talk about the whole, they might just, get Dynamite, license the books out to Dynamite, considering how, I try not to harp on Dynamite, but they have pretty good writers, not so good artists. Like the last good artist they had, other than Matt Wagner doing the writing, but was Sergio Cari, I can't pronounce it. He did the Lone Ranger comics back in the day with the the John Cassidy covers. That guy's a good artist, a really good artist. The Action Bible book. I'm not a super religious person, but the Action Bible is a great, it's all the stories of the Bible in 2 or 3 pages. It's that's great storytelling, even if you're not but it's just great storytelling in general. I picked it up for $10. It was on my deep discount. But Dynamite and the rest of these people, if they took that, they probably would treat it better and more in line with the cinematic equivalent. Okay, there's a Deadpool movie this many months out. Let's go ahead and have be in the middle or the start of an arc, that ties into it or close enough to it, mirrors it. Kind of like what they did when they did X-Men 2. They had the arc, the sequel to God Loves Man Kills, the one where they, the Reverend Stryker and everything. They did in that Extreme X-Men. They had an arc going on.
Yep.
Back then, that's what, 15 years ago, almost 20 years ago now. So there's no excuse. That stuff's been done before. Like they would change Spider-Man's costume when Spider-Man 3 came out. They went back to the Back in Black. I remember this stuff, but they don't even bother doing that now.
They don't. But I think so. Here's my theory on this. Is I remember back the CBR boards a decade ago, let's just stick there. You have the Ellis boards. You have a bunch of different boards that exist in the past, but just go with CBR. And at the time, I don't know, a while back, Kelly Thompson, who's of course a current writer, was one of the columnists there, would publish articles and was active on the boards. And the boards, like all message boards, were kind of a free-for-all of, flaming and people back and forth and everything else. But there was a topic that I remember clearly, and it was a common one. Articles would get written on it, around how lame it was that Marvel would be forced, kind of in quotes, by the movies to change things about their comics. And they would use the exact example of I guess we're getting a God Loves Man Kills sequel because the movie's there. And isn't this lame that the movie makes the comic do this? And I remember, I'm not calling out Thompson, but a lot of current actual writers and editors and people at Marvel and DC for that matter and other places were active on those boards. They were, trying to get into the industry and they were up and coming in their careers. And they were part of those discussions that kind of railed against comics having to subvert their storylines to have synergy with the movie. Well, now those people are in charge, and the comics are definitely not insane. Well, they're in sync in a very strange way. I mean, Marvel is definitely producing the Infinity War and all the different Infinity crossovers and everything else with the stones, and they changed them from gems to stones to align with the movie. But if you pick up those issues, you've got and please, nobody, I'm not knocking any women or anything. You got pregnant Nova Warrior and kind of weird Guardians of the Galaxy pacifist Drax defending a giant stone. This bears no resemblance to the movie at all. I mean, there's nothing there that just connects the two. And so whether it's a good story or not, it feels like this very half-assed attempt to have some movie synergy that has nothing to do with going on in theaters. In many ways, seems almost like they're deliberately kind of giving the movie the finger. And and here we are. And so, and by the way, as a lifelong comic fan, obviously a lot of my life's invested in it. The people who listen to this, the people we talk to on Twitter, love comics. But people have to understand the movies are probably going to do a lot of the material better because they've got $100 million budget in some cases. Look at Infinity War. They can throw crazy amounts of money with it. They can spend 2 years making it. They can get writers and actors. They can produce this whole thing, and they only have to fill 2.5 hours of time. So they're going to come out with this extremely polished, thing that maybe you liked the movie, maybe you didn't, but it's going to be a quality product. Comics, on the other hand, are churning out stuff for peanuts in a lot of cases because the creators are not paid nearly enough, and they're doing it every 30 days. So they're not on the same level in terms of the money that's being put into entertainment. And so it's a very odd time. The movies are strange. Free Comic Day, did what it did. I was absolutely surprised and shocked by the reaction on Twitter. There seemed to be some kind of weird flame war between Gail Simone and a bunch of other people. I'm not even sure what the other side was around what Free Comic Day was. And I'll be honest, I don't even understand how that was a controversy. It's marketing. It's nothing but marketing.
Exactly.
What else do you think it is?
Well, that's one of those things, like that right there, like arguing over the simplest things. I mean, there was that little flare up about Next Wave agents that hate the first SJW Marvel book. I heard that just floating around. I was like, what is this? Like somebody needs to just stomp on that fire, and put it out before the embers of anything. Because the witch hunts, you go back and look at God Loves Man Kills, considering how it was. I mean, I recently reread it, and I was like, this is what comics should be. Like this kind of like the current, where it's not only you have solid work. Brent Anderson is no Jim Lee, but that's the thing. It doesn't need to be Jim Lee. It has that artwork. That artwork's black and white or in color. It doesn't matter. It's a great story. It's got meaning. It's a meaningful story. But you look at a lot of the modern comics today, and like you're saying, there's also zero incentive. Back in the day, probably was zero incentive as well, but the people were not as educated enough, the people working in the industry and people outside, the fact that, oh yeah, you can create all these characters from Marvel, they're not going to pay you, they weren't going to give the original artwork back, they'll screw over Jack Kirby, they'll screw you over, but hey, you get to work on your favorite, your fan favorite character of all time, but for peanuts. While at DC, they'll shovel money at you. Like I've talked to people that work for DC and just brief kind of work for hire deals, and it's like they paid good, they treated me right, and I've talked to people that have worked at Marvel, and it's not as many people. I'm not talking whole hundreds of people or anything, taking a clean survey, but the comparison is Marvel screws you over. Marvel doesn't treat you as well as you'd think, and it's like, well, you should be grateful you're working at Marvel. That kind of thing. It's that they want that gratitude, where the comics, they should the price wise and everything. That's a whole other issue. I mean, that is they could get some actual ads. If Alterna can do it, Marvel could do it. And we talked about that last time we were on about the actually selling ads. Nobody wants ads, but if that brings the price down by $1 or $2, going from $4 or $5, if you bring a Marvel book to under $2, say $1.99, that right there, I could you can move more issues. I would think you can buy, because it's $4 Marvel comic. Well, it's 30 plus 32 pages, 20 pages of story, and 12 pages of in-house ads. That's just why.
It absolutely would help. I do think we've talked about the ads before, but you're right. I don't like ads. I absolutely hate ads. But I don't know. I'd be curious. I doubt there's 1 in 100 comic fans who would say, "Hey, we're going to trade putting 4 ads into your comic for $1 off, $2 off the cover." everybody would take that deal. I mean, come on, that's a no brainer. And I do think, and the math doesn't line up completely that way, but there are opportunities. There are sponsorship things that can be done. You could have different formats of paper. You could have a prestige edition like they did in the old days, where you had the old days, Christ, like 20 years ago, where you had nice stock in one, and it costs a little bit more than the more newsprint in the other. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways to do it. I'm not going to be kind of backseat driver for all of the comic decisions by any stretch of imagination, but it's a missed opportunity, because there's a lot of fans that really want to read comics, trying to get involved in this industry, in this community, get excited about the movie. Infinity War was very, very positive. People liked it, kids liked it, toys are selling, and yet the comics are they're not taking advantage of what it's had. And it is very weird, because Disney is so good at this with many of their other lines. They are great at taking two properties and putting them together and getting crossover sales and everything else. And it is abnormal that Marvel doesn't get there. And we pick a lot on Marvel. I think DC has many of the same problems. They haven't had the movies take off, but there are just kind of obvious opportunities where you just kind of wonder who made this decision, and was there supervision making this decision? Is anyone paying attention as it puts it together? And go ahead.
Oh no, that's a good question though. The supervision, especially over DC, like we found out now. I mean, look upon like really pretty much everything. Like, oh, Deanie and Tim, they should be doing the DC movies and like live action and everything. But you actually look at what they do without what do you call it, standards and practices, without censorship, without somebody looking over their shoulder and keeping their, I've talked to people that have worked in animation. I've known a few, worked in it, no longer work in it, like worked around those people. So they may be biased, more likely they are, but there's a lot of deviancy in animation. There's like really, and in that the Killing Joke movie, like, oh yeah, let's add, there's a sexual relationship between Bruce and Batgirl. It's like that, like, was that needed? No, it wasn't. I mean, I'm not a fan of Killing Joke to begin with. I'm like, everybody, oh, it's the greatest comic of all time. I'm like, no, it's not. But whatever, that's your opinion. But that kind of stuff, and where you had JLU. I mean, you had in the DC animated universe stuff. All that was great when it was on TV, but you take that off of it, and then you get stuff like when they did the New Frontier. It's like, yeah, we got to go gory and explosive and just brutality everywhere. It's like, really, you need to chill out. I mean, I think that's like that aggression. It's like a lot of them, that's why they slip, sexual innuendo stuff. They're that frustration, like, oh, I got to be under somebody's thumb. Nah, I'll sneak this in there, and it's weird. But yeah, it's like, this. Like we said, like if somebody goes from Infinity War to come to the comic book store and wants to pick up one of the books, it's like, who are these people? And that's the biggest problem.
It's a missed opportunity. It's a no brainer. It's a place where you can make fairly easy money. I mean, and again, kind of not to harp on it, but you go to any of the theme parks, and you cannot, especially if you have kids, you cannot make it out of there without buying a ton of crap you do not want. And they're very clever about it. They will change the windows on Main Street as you're going out of the park to reflect kind of some of the parades that have happened, some of the things that have changed during the day. It's very active in how they promote to people. It's not an accident that the biggest stores in the majority of the parks are all right at the exit. It's because they're just hooking you one more time before you get out. And then you come over to the comics, and you take this Infinity War movie, which was heavily based off the original Infinity War with Lim and Perez, and I mean, God, just reprint those issues. Literally, you just take those issues and send them out as a Marvel classic for $1 or $5, whatever it is. Just shove them back in, and it was amazing actually how difficult it was in some cases. And I blame, by the way, Diamond as much as Marvel, maybe more, because there just wasn't good recognition of getting some of the trades in for the movie. I mean, just go for the cheap money. And that sounds terrible. It sounds uncreative. It's everything that, again, 15, 20 years ago, you go to some of these message boards, comics was a bit, healthier then, at least in terms of the content coming out. And you had people just railing against what they saw as cheap marketing ploys with the X-Men movies and even the first Avengers movie, some of this stuff. And now today you have the opposite problem of just kind of random content attached to nothing and not hooking people and not going for that easy dollar. And the point of it is you don't make your living off the easy dollar. But if you're Marvel or more probably you're a shop and you have a bunch of just kind of mindless Infinity War tie-ins there, even if they're reprints and other things, that stuff moves to new comic readers. And then meanwhile, you've got the other 80 titles on the shelf and you can start to attach there. Hey, do you like Gamora? Here's some new issues with Gamora. You can do that. But the stores aren't really given that chance. It's a weird place to be. And it's kind of, you look at it for a while and you think there's got to be a strategy here. There is something they're trying to do. There's some kind of better reason behind all this. And then you have kind of the depressed weekends where you're like, nope, there's no strategy here at all. There's just random kind of people shoveling stuff out, and why not?
And that right there, that's the disappointing part, because you're looking at these books like back was it 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and going back and looking through like the Comic-Con numbers and some of the other stuff, which I know it isn't 100%. I know that stuff is not 100% accurate,
Yeah.
and as well that is to the stores, and even then not 100%. But that isn't necessary to the customers. But even then, you're looking at, most of the books, like you have some, 100,000, 150,000, stuff like that. A lot of books would be like between, like the top 10 would be like 110 to like 80, 90,000. Now it's like, 100,000 for this one super special, like, with metal. And then the like number 5 is like 70,000 or 50,000. So it's like steep drop off as far as the content goes, because it isn't just Marvel and it's DC as well. But then it is nice to see something like, even though I've not read Walking Dead since around like issue 90 something, I just gave up. I was like, whatever, I don't care anymore, and hadn't watched the show either. But to see 80,000, 70, 80,000 for Walking Dead, for a creator-owned comic, that yes, it has a TV show backing, and even though they replaced the showrunner, and it's like a lot of the stuff, and it's like the stagnation. Even with that, it is moving a lot of product. Now I've talked to people that have, like, it sells. It doesn't sit on the shelves. It's not like collecting dust. It sells back issues as well. The trades, all that stuff. Like if they miss, that's good. That right there, that to me, that's a healthy side of the market. For something that isn't, established for 30, 40, 50 years or even longer. But it's like you're saying, like that right there, because it's for like, hey, are you watching a show? You want to know what might happen next? Not necessarily guarantee. Go pick up the book. There's the incentive. There's no incentive to pick. It's to me, it's almost feels like there's no incentive to pick up the, like like the Infinity War. You come in there, you pick it up, and like, well, why give this another shot? Because like you said, there's nothing recognizable with the Marvel books. They're not even trying. It's like I think a lot of it they've given to, I'm not saying all of them. It's like, kind of trying to be too general, but you give a lot of these creators who come from an independent field, like just give them, let them run roughshod. And for every like James Robinson, you get like a Kelly Thompson. With Kelly Thompson, hey, whatever, do Jim and holograms, whatever. People go read that. I don't know, but it just, you could go from doing that to doing, a Marvel property. That's kind of that's a weird transition. Like you say, the same thing about Grant Morrison. He was writing his own, like, basically self-insert spy fiction comic in the '80s, and and then like look at him, look what he did. I mean, I think he's kind of like peaked as far as my opinion goes. I know
we'll see. Grant Morrison's interesting because there are very few names in the big two now that really move books on their names alone. Snyder is one, Morrison is another. He's been out now for a little bit. We'll see what his Green Lantern does. I think there's some possibilities that get some good buzz and turns that title into something pretty interesting.
Oh, Grant Morrison's coming on the Green Lantern?
He is, yeah. He'll be writing Hal Jordan and doing Green Lantern.
This is the first time I'm hearing about this.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those comic websites, I'm not talking about, Bleeding Cool does not count, because that's an open septic tank right there. That doesn't count. But a lot of them you can't even go to now because they're so hungry for ads. They'll have those pop-ups and stuff like that. I'm on a laptop. I don't want to get a virus from one of these really sleazy ads, because you're more likely to get an ad from a comic website and go to a porn website. That's the downside. Or one of those like viruses or malware. But somebody in the chat, Britt mentions they did those True Believers issues, the $1 ones.
Yep.
And I saw, like, in my shop, when they had those, they moved pretty quickly. I mean, they didn't have many left.
No, they moved great.
And would you think that something like that, as an introduction to, but that's nothing new because it's introducing old comics.
Mhm.
But would you think that could actually help, though?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, no, the True Believers titles are great. They are, we need more of them. They need to do them more regularly. They need to have them. I mean, it needs to be, again, it's sad because it's not the most creative, original, new art kind of idea, but it sells books and it gets people in, and it's a low price point, which is key. And yeah, there needs to be a monthly run of those titles. I think who was doing the X-Men. I think I just my brain's a little hazy now, but there's been attempts where they've just taken series that run for a long time and they put them out and they do a cheap price point. They slap a new cover on it. I remember Art Adams was doing a bunch of them for some X-Men issues, and they were just putting them back out again.
Oh, X-Men Classics.
Yeah, X-Men Classics. Thank you. I could not get
they would have also add like a back issue, like a backup story, like a 5-6 page
right.
backup story usually.
Exactly. And that backup story had some known people on it, but it also had a bunch of kind of new people they were trying out, some new kind of voices and other things, or ways to kind of, fill in some gaps in the original story. It became kind of a showcase. But that run was smart. It was, and then I think they adjusted the price point where it was the same as the regular issue going on, which kind of screwed it up. But do something like that, put the issues out, and you will get people getting kind of reintroduced to the books. It would help. I think it's not all about the price, but it's about just providing content people will come and watch and listen to.
I think also, like, part of me wants to say I don't know if they've done any of the, because I'd seen some of them, but my store, like I said, the ones they ordered and the ones they got and everything like that, most of them, like, and I've seen them before, like most of those issues to begin with, so I wasn't too like paying too much attention. But I got to think part of it, Marvel might be like, let's not put some of these out because it would actually put our stuff to shame. Something that's 20, 30 years old, like the way it looks, is like, I wouldn't want to put out any of the Jim Lee era X-Men or the Silvestri, like the X-Men die in Dallas, before they go to the Outback, all that stuff, the Outback era X-Men. Because you go look at that and you look what's on the shelves now, the art and everything like that. Was it Aiden Syaf, the guy that's doing like the X-Men Red or whatever? The really weird faces.
Yeah. No, he's kind of an Oliver Capil kind of look and feel to him a little bit. And people hate that I just say that, but it's interesting. I think I don't know. It's hard to kind of analyze exactly where to go right now, but I think the True Believers books do sell real well. I think getting some of the classics back out, there is more of a move to go to graphic novels. That's really true, and that market is growing and becoming healthier, and is bringing in new demographics, and that's great. But if you want to do more for floppies, and maybe you don't, but if you do, putting some of these old issues out at a cheaper price point and getting people used to runs. I mean, honestly, you can take a 12 issue storyline. You can say, here's something really cool. We're just going to have it be published every 2 weeks until the 12 issues are done. I mean, put out Secret Wars again in a monthly way. I do think that the embarrassment, I think, wouldn't necessarily be the art. I think it would be more that these titles would outsell a lot of the current new content.
Yeah, I think so. Like somebody was mentioning that in the chat as well, like the selling out, and that right there, that makes a whole lot of sense. But they, I remember I actually went through my back issues by the long boxes, and I found these. Mm-hmm. There were these X-Men. They're like not magazines, but they were like small version, I guess, trade paperbacks, or like 3 or 4 issues of X-Men. It was the Alan Davis was writing, the whole when Wolverine died and turned out he was a Skrull and all that stuff, and he was death for Apocalypse and everything, like the 12, which is just it's like, hey, you like Zero Tolerance, right? Yeah, it was great. The X-Men grounded coming out of the Hulkbuster base. Wolverine's got the thing, can't pop his claws. Oh, I love that. Well, now like Cyclops dies, Wolverine quote unquote it was just like unfortunate, but they had 3 or 4 issues of current run, and they had a backup like a 80s X-Men story, or like X-Men Unlimited, something like that from years prior, and it was like $5 at the time. So it's like like inflation, so $8. So you're basically getting 3 or 4 comics for like $8.
Yep.
I honestly think they could do something like that for these older stories. Like, okay, you get Infinity War #1, you get old Secret War, you get like all the epics or whatever. That kind of stuff. Like I mean, hell, something like that's been, I've seen a lot of people, they harp on, Onslaught and everything, but you know what? Compared to what's been going on lately, Onslaught wasn't so bad.
No, it's true. And a lot of the old events, but again, I think so. the test, and who was it? Somebody was doing this, when did Marvel go astray? And people were trying to analyze kind of where things went on. And I do think that's too limiting a question. I think you got to say, when did comics go astray? Because even though DC does many different things, a lot of the kind of the more toxic trends, and I'm not talking about social issues or any of that. I'm talking about where marketing fails or the price point goes up or anything else. It is, you do see it fairly universal of kind of these problems. And if you go back again about 15, 20 years, you go to message boards, what are people complaining about? And you get a couple continual ones. It's the movie tie-ins that we already talked about. It's things like the event fatigue. And this, people talk about this all the time, but even 5 years ago, people were just shouting over and over about no more events, event fatigue, event fatigue. And yet the events were the biggest sellers for Marvel. So you look at that and you say, well, the fans are screaming about it, but then that is what is selling. That is the top of the charts, and that's been true all the way back. And so what do we do now? Well, now the events are weird, honestly. I mean, if you go back, you look at some of the in-comic crossovers, you look at Fall of the Mutants way back in the day, you look at some of the Avengers crossovers that they did, Avengers X-Men, and they did a limited series, or Civil War or Secret Wars or any of those kinds of things, good or bad, Onslaught. And some were good, some were bad, but they sold, and there was some care put into it. Now you flash forward to today, and we've got just the strangest kind of half-assed events. And you have to ask yourself, is it because some of the people who are now running the show were railing against these things 10, 15 years ago? Now they're going to show us all how it's done, but they're missing some of the fundamentals of actually what sold and moved books. I mean, I don't care how event fatigued people are. If I could right now wave a magic wand and have Civil War, the first one, in my shop again, God, who wouldn't? Everybody would. It moved all kinds of books. It set up all kinds of storylines, even if you hated it.
Oh, I hated it though.
But
yeah, if it moves, that's all that matters. If it moves product.
It moved product, and because it moved product, it then boosted numbers for other titles, and it allowed creators to do other things, and it allowed other books to come out, and it had this echo effect. And so I'm not here saying, hey, we got to go back to those days and let's bring back Secret Invasion and some of these things, but there was a path there that was well understood by the industry, that moved books, created health, brought more money into the hands of creators they were able to afford, or they paid more for top level creators to do this stuff. And then the auxiliary effect is a lot of the supporting books were healthier as a result. And today, you get Civil War II, which really, I don't know at what point Bendis said, okay, I'm out of here. But it felt like that was a event series of a comic author dying. I mean, there was so little passion in that event. On every page, nobody cared. It was the most lifeless thing ever. And then that was followed up by Secret Empire, which was just the strangest non-event ever. And so it's a very strange time. So then you get something like Metal coming out, and whether you like it or hate it, again, you read it, and I do think there is something to being able to read a comic or see the marketing and see the material coming out of it and going, well, somebody cares about this. They're, at least, whether I like the story or not, at least it looks like Capullo's there and he's knocking out of the park, and Snyder is doing interviews for it, and they're putting an effort forward. So even if you dislike it, hey, at least it's like they're trying to do a good job. And you compare it to the current Infinity storyline going on at Marvel, and it's, again, you read that and you're like, I'm just not sure why they're doing this. Who's excited about this? There's an author, and I'm tired. I apologize. I'm still jet lagged. There is a X-Men. There's an author, kind of young adult author, just got signed to do an X-Men story, and there's some tweets about it and everything else, and it was so cute. That sounds demeaning, but it was kind of refreshing to see, because the person is on Twitter just going nuts, like posting 80 things about how excited they are. They're going to write an X-Men story, not even an ongoing, just a little story. And they were jumping up and down and excited about it and passionate about it and everything else. And you compare that to the regulars who, in a lot of cases, it seems like, goal number one is to, let's see if I can kind of snark and bait some people who are upset at comics and get a little war going because I'm bored today. It's the passion matters so much in selling a book. And that's the part that that is you see missing quite a bit.
Yeah, that's one of those things, that passion and projects. Is I'm looking at, like, I this sounds so weird. This is like, everybody's like, "Oh, the '90s are so horrible. They were horrible for comics, this and that." But I'm going back. I'm looking at Strangers in Paradise. You had the Starman run, James Robinson, Tony Harris. You had Hellboy. You had all. I mean, you had a lot of Preacher. I mean, Hellblazer. Just constantly, just good stuff. I mean, you had a lot of good comics in the '90s. But one of the things I've been the Image books from the '90s and stuff like, I really didn't read Cyberforce back when it was in the, because it's hard to come by. A lot of the Image books are hard to come by, mainly because like I had to get whatever I got from Spinnerax or trade it at school like it was a black market. I remember paying $5. God help me, for it was a really beat up copy of The Heroes Are Born Captain America. The live film.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, but it's like one of those things, because it's like, I didn't see it on a spinner rack. I'm like, oh, I gotta have this, and I'm like, oh, regret. But the Cyberforce, going back and reading it and like reading these issues, I'm like, Mark Silvestri doing his thing. It's basically an X-Men book, which is, back then you had the X-Men. It's kind of a glut of Wildcats, basically like an X-Men book. Cyberforce, basically an X-Men book. You can say the same thing for a couple other things, but to be so far removed and like, oh, they've done this and they've done that. I'm like, that seems nothing like X-Men. Like, what, you got time displaced X-Men running around. I mean, you had that before, but it's like the original team and this, and I'm like, I want nothing to do with that. So when Top Cow rebooted Cyberforce again, I'm like, okay, number one was gonna be, it looks like a cool cover. That right there, I was like, it's Mark Silvestri on the cover. It's like, oh, Silvestri's involved. Just because he created it, he had nothing to do with the actual creation of the book. It was like 2 writers, 20 pages of story. Nothing happens except guy loses his arm. People just talk about it, and it's like, what is this? I paid like $5 for just talking heads for the most part, and that's it. That's all that happens. I mean, that was indicative of and then Matt Hawkins, the guy's in charge of it, Top Cow, and the guy who co-wrote the book, he was melting down over people, being negative about the book. It was like, you go from Cyberforce, and then you had some, even like, the Hunter Killer Cyberforce trade and that stuff, which unfortunately the post that they kind of, they dropped the ball. But to look at that and then look at what they've produced here, it's like where you had Kenneth Rockford doing the artwork, you had Mark Waid writing. And then Mark Waid and Ron Mars and a couple other, people now, they're like, oh, they're oh, they're horrible people, but they can write great comics, and that's another thing. It's like they have that potential. But then look at this stuff. It's like it's an indie comic, and it used to be Cyberforce is over the top, sexy women, manly men, big guns, action. Now it's just gone. It's like nobody does this anymore, and I think there's a starving market for those people. And as far as getting that in comics, like, you have to do it yourself. I mean, really, it doesn't say.
There is, yeah. There's a market for it. It's more, I won't say more, but there are good comics. There's a lot of good comics. I can always, every week, I can find some things I enjoy. I think there's some things that are out that are good. I think readers, the most common complaint I hear, or praise I hear, is this comic getting anything done? Whether you've got a 90s style kind of art style, you have an action story, or whatever it is something actually occurring, or is this kind of decompressed time filler? And that's what is missing in a lot, month to month. Is a lot of comics have gone for what feels like kind of a day job. Like, I'm here, I'm going to read this comic, and it's like going to work, and I work for 8 hours, and then I go home and I go to sleep. That's how the comic feels. And that may be a little bit more true to life. I think there's definitely a desire from a lot of writers and creators to write something authentic to real life. But you gotta, the comics are successful, or comics good or bad, that get something accomplished. And by the same token, I think you've got a bunch of editors who are in the mix who are, again, underpaid. Give them more money. Give these editors more cash and expect more out of them. The grammar errors, the spelling errors, or just the pure passion on the page needs to come across. But it's just, it has this feel in a lot of cases, people just showing up and what have you. And I think that's the problem on Twitter, especially the big, I don't know about the big war, but the big thing you often hear with, you mentioned Wade Mars, or the the DNC guy, or all these different arguments go around social issues or social justice and all this. I would argue, and I've said this before, that's a big red herring. It's, is the story good? Is it bad? Is something happening? Is it not happening? Because you mentioned before, Walking Dead, Saga, and Wiccan Divine. These comics sell well, consistently well, month after month, no problems at all. And at least two of those three comics have heavy social justice, the lifestyle, whatever you want to label it. It's in there. They sell fine. The readers come in, they buy it. There's no there's no avoiding those books. But when there's no passion in the title, you conversely, you go to, and Iceman's been canceled, and I beat up on it a lot, but there's no passion in that title. There's nothing happening in the page. You open it up and like, here's a 30-page, well, not even that, but here's a bunch of pages about how Iceman went on a date and, almost got to first base, I guess. I mean, just, good Lord, nothing is going on. And so you got Gilead, you got Saga just kicking its ass month after month doing these issues. And so I think that's why I get frustrated with the argument that goes on a lot about Twitter about we've got to get all the SJW stuff out of comics. Like, do whatever you want, but bring passion in. Like, if you get all those issues out and you have a bunch of kind of dull talking heads page after page, then things are no better. Nothing is going to help.
Yeah, the passion part, that's the biggest thing, because a lot of these books, I go back to, I was curious about reading Rom's Space Knight, so I picked it up. It was like $70 on eBay. The entire series was shipped in this giant cardboard boxes wrapped in duct tape and all this, that. And I got it, and I read all, like, the entirety of Rom's Space Knight in, span of like a week and a half. And that first issue, it's like a lot of books, they'll do the whole world building thing. And it's like a lot of it's like, well, that's because you're supposed to do world building. And it's like they introduce the book, I think it was under the Jim Shooter era. Mm-hmm. And you had that, he's like, he had that demand. It's like, you have to have conflict. You got to have, each issue has to have some kind of resolution, even if it that to a degree. And you can build upon it. Rom comes to Earth, ends up in West Virginia. People are freaked out. Townspeople are like, oh my God, the alien come down, this and that, and this in the Marvel Universe. And he's got to hunt dire race, and dire race look like people. So to everybody else, he's just killing innocent people. And it's like this, like that right there. It didn't do this whole slow build world. Like, when it's $5 an issue, I don't got time for slow builds.
No. You do not.
And that right there, that's the biggest problem, that whole slow build stuff. And it's like, Iceman could have been an interesting book. Okay, this is a guy who ran with a team. He ran with Spider-Man at one time. He's an X-Men. He's an X-Man. He's like he's a founding member. But this is a guy that could have been basically like a spy story. Like, okay, there's somebody running a mutant, mutant slavery, and kind of echoing back to the old Genosha and all that stuff. And at the same time, he's got to deal with, he does, like, you can put the little date thing in there, but actually have him where it's like, he's got to bust this little, he's got to infiltrate, sneak into this, like, he's going up a building using like the ice slide thing to go in the building, put a little bug in, because even though he has ice powers, he can't, make bugs. He can't teleport through walls. So he's got use the ice to cut a hole in the window and then put a bug in the office and go back for his. It's like, I gotta be right back. I go to the bathroom, telling his date, and then come back and all that stuff. You could do that, but it's a lot of this creativity. You have these people there's no, like I said, there's no passion. There's lack of creativity. There's lack of, and also, like you said, mentioned earlier, the fact that there's no incentive financially, especially, to actually create, because why create a new villain? Like I was mentioning to you, like Black Panther. To me, Black Panther, it doesn't matter. They send him into space, they put him back in time, future, whatever. That saying, hero is only as good as their villain. Well, he's got Claw, and that's about Claw, Killmonger, and where is it, Killmonger? Yeah, and then that's it. That's it. That's all he's got. I mean, they don't even have a Vibranium Man. Maybe they do, but it's something. I mean,
you've got. I mean, yeah, it's funny. Villains is a real problem for Marvel right now, and I've been meaning to do this. I think I did a few weeks ago, but just on Wednesday, take the new comics out, put them out on, stretch all the things that Marvel's put out, and just count the issues that have a villain. So first of all, you're going to knock off a third of the titles, because a third of the books don't have any villain. There's no, the conflict is, who knows? There's some, angry racist out on the street that's protesting something. I mean, okay, that's a villain, but that's, random human mob is not a true villain. What is going on here? And then you take of the comics that actually have a villain, first of all, there's a lot of reuse. You'll see the same villain pop up in like 2 titles in the same month for no apparent reason. And then when is the villain being treated seriously? Like, look at, it was very strange to see Ultron go from the Bendis storyline where he's blowing up everything and wrecked the future and they had to do all that. And then the story with emerging with Hank Pym and kind of Rage of Ultron and some of these things, and coming off of Annihilation and just some of these different, big Ultron stories. And now he's kind of a comedic, merged with a Tyrannosaur foil for Squirrel Girl. And that's so bizarre to have these kind of epic villains get built up and then we'll just toss it out. Or, Kraven the Hunter is kind of doing something in Wade's Captain America 1 month, but then the same month he's kind of palling around with Squirrel Girl as a buddy. What are you doing? There's no tension there, and so it's just very hard to tell what the story is at that point, and that's very different from other regions and other comics. And you do see the titles, the indie titles are doing very well. I've been a big fan of Skyward. I've been promoting it. It's a new book. I think a lot of people absolutely hate it, who are my regular followers, I suspect, but it's got a very different concept. They're absolutely world building. There's world building all over the place, but there is momentum to the title. There's something, we're on issue 2 and things have a decent amount has actually happened. They've kind of created the world, created the setting, and there's some tension and some conflict going on. And it's, I think it takes a lot of skill to write a great book, but it doesn't necessarily take a lot of skill to follow a basic formula. And the formula being, create some tension, put some conflict in there, move the story along. It's not that hard. Black Panther, he doesn't have a great villains gallery. Let's make some new ones and let's borrow some. I mean, you're telling me that, the last 40 years of Avengers stories, you can't find 2 or 3 villains, soup them up a little bit and throw them in there? Does Bendis have some kind of all rights on the Hood? Bring the Hood in here as a thief to steal some vibranium and have that conflict going on. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do as opposed to every single issue has to be some social conflict where everybody learns a lesson. I mean, do that once in a while, that's great for depth, but month after month, every comic, it goes nowhere. And
the horse is going to it's already beaten to death. Don't turn it into dust,
Yeah, it's dead. It's long dead.
But in that right there, like that conflict in stories, and that's one thing about, I've seen in a lot of, let's say, Eastern, manga comics, whatever you want to look at it, where there really isn't a lack of that. Like there was you look at this stuff, like one of my favorite books is, little other ones, Goku, Midnight Eye, and then Lone Wolf and Cub. And there's always like, I'm just walking through, I'm just traveling with my child. I just want, and there's conflict. Conflict always rises up. Same thing with Goku, Midnight Eye by Buichi Terasawa. He's just a normal dude, gets a robot eye that could, which. And that whole Cave Carson stuff with the, that young man was like, I've seen this before. But it just, a lot more fun because there's like no peacock ladies that try to drive you off the road, or guys that keep killer bees in their beanie caps, or cybernetic sex slave robot women have motorcycle seats and handlebars on their backs and shoot lasers out of their mouths. You don't really get that in comics these days for the most part. But there's always like some kind of conflict, some kind of villain, and that stuff like that. And while you were, you were saying jet lag, you were, Land of the Rising Sun for a while. You were mentioning that the Japanese, like they would have they have interesting ways of doing things. It's something that the West could learn from, and I wanted you to expand on that if possible.
Yeah, sure. I think Japan's an interesting region because it's misunderstood, I think, a lot in the States. I've been to Japan many times. And a lot of people kind of will write it off as just anime manga, kind of what we see exported out there. And that's the name of the genre, so that makes sense. But Japan as a market there's a couple things that are kind of true of the kind of day-to-day culture. First of all, there's not a stigma about comics being for a certain age. And we're in better shape than we used to be. in the US, 10, 15 years ago, it was more of a stigma. But in Japan, it's, you'll see businessmen on the train reading manga. You'll see all ages up shopping and doing things. There's also the distribution is a lot more like it was in, oh, I don't know, in where there was a newsstand. I mean, you can get manga anywhere. You can get it on the street. There are people vendors selling it there. You can get it in shops. You can get it in the rail stations. You can get it in the JR terminal. Anywhere, manga is plentiful to get. And it also has a very healthy digital market. Now that's a little bit different than what we have in the U.S. because the digital market is almost by necessity there. The titles, the collector's market. There certainly are people that collect manga and other things, but there's just not the space. Not to go into a complete stereotype, there's not a space to amass massive boxes and boxes of comics. So you have a very different situation there, and manga digital becomes kind of a necessity. It's a lot easier to bring something up on your phone, where a lot of, frankly, manga is read on a very small device or on a PC at home, and you're on a hour-long rail ride into the city, and you're going to read some manga. So digital is healthy there. I think pricing is completely different, and how things are collected and put out is just kind of complete apples to oranges to what we have now. But the part that's most similar, and I think the U.S. could learn a lot from, is around the shops, places that carry manga, and it's not like you're going into a comic shop. You're going into a shop that has a lot of different things. They have positioned themselves as being attuned to geek culture, kind of that Akihabara audience of people who are going to come in and they're going to buy maybe toys, or they're going to buy CDs, or they're going to buy movies, or they're going to buy manga, or they're going to buy perverted things, whatever it happens to be. And there is a better harmony, I think, of all this material is there. And so if there's a drop, if you get a kind of legendary creator that stops doing a run and jump, then you have other things that are going to kind of take over. So the balance of money, you talk to some of the shop owners, some of the distributors, it's a much healthier, much more balanced system that isn't at the whim of kind of what happens with the publisher any week. And that creates a healthier ecosystem, because the shops are then not, the publishers have to kind of work more on merit to get their material out and to get artists kind of promoted. And there's a much bigger kind of rise in creating good content. And the people are just buying content that they like. So there's a much healthier balance of what's going on than what we have in the U.S., where if Civil War II tanks and DC has nothing going on, then your shop is kind of just screwed. It protects it from those ups and downs, and as a result, I think the publishers and the distributors have to work a little harder. And part of it's also cultural, of course. I mean, the shenanigans and things that Diamond gets into here in the U.S. there would be people killing themselves in Japan if that was their company and they shipped out boxes to the wrong places, all bent up and wet. That would be, complete shame. Where,
which I'd like to see that. Though. It's like. Okay. Like the 24/7 Diamond Seppuku channel, it's like, you have disgraced the comic book industry. And then he can't do it all the way. He gets halfway past navel, he bends over, and there he goes his head. Thank you for joining the Diamond Seppuku channel. We'll be back with another executive.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, there's a kind of a zero tolerance for just kind of just doing a sloppy job. And that's a stereotype a lot of people in the U.S. think about Japan, but there's some truth to it. There is still the concept of legit shame, of putting out something really kind of half-assed and terrible, whether you're a creator or a publisher. This is the show apparently I'm going to beat up on Bendis and Civil War II, but if you had a creation go out to the market like that with the critical reaction that it had, you would have their version of Bendis apologizing. I mean, coming out and saying, yeah, I really fucked up and I'm going to do better next time. I hope you give me another chance. I'm ashamed of what I've done. And that's, I don't know, that'd be kind of healthy and fun to see here in the U.S. I'd appreciate that.
I would like to see that as well, because you have a lot of people that used to take pride in their work. I mean, you used to build stuff to last. I was talking about before we started broadcasting, my headphones breaking, nobody makes any things last. And it's like, hey, what can I do to just get it out there? And that's another thing, like that, the lack of, there's no shame. I mean, cultural differences as well. And now that's, where here it's like, they still have, it's like you can do your thing as long as it's not over here. It's like you have like designated kind of zones. The way I understand Japan, I'm not
Mhm.
some, but it's like
Mhm.
you could do your thing over here. That's fine, but it does not belong over here. Do not cross the streams. Here, it's like, oh, shame. Shame is bad. No, you should feel no shame. Just be who you are. Be a screw up. I don't get the other thing. I don't get nobody in trouble. Well, yeah, yes. If you have a job, you do not do your job. You should lose your job. And
Yeah.
then that right there, if there's no consequence, then it's like, well, clearly, like criminals, the justice system doesn't, because nobody punishes criminals. It's like you don't punish criminals. You don't punish people that screw up. It's like, well, we're all human. We all screw up. That doesn't cut it. It's like, well, I'm sorry. I was doing an operation on your sister, and we had a bad. I screwed up. Hey, we're human, right? Like, no, no, it doesn't work. It
No,
doesn't work there. It shouldn't work anywhere else.
there is definitely there's a I mean there's an attitude of people are given, well, to some extent they're given some rope. I mean, if you're a creator and you're a popular creator and you put out a lot of good work, you get an audience, you can bring in some dollars, you can kind of do what you want. You look at some of the Ghibli films and some of the kind of history of how those came about. And then there was one, it wasn't Ponyo, it was one after that didn't do well financially. And so you have this kind of industry legend who produces these films and does a good job, still coming out and saying, "Yep, I take responsibility for that one. I screwed up. I'll try harder next time." And in fact, even kind of, I'm really leaving out a ton of details here, so there's a lot more to this story. But just I'm going to more or less leave the company and go reform something else because I don't want again, a lot of reasons why he was kind of pushed out, on and on. But there's taking responsibility for something that didn't land well. And I think that's at the heart of a lot of the conflict we have here in the US. And we have, certainly you see it played out on Twitter, where on one hand, you got a lot of fans who have a megaphone they didn't have before and the ability to kind of put their voice out. And some are using that responsibility and some are not. And some of it's just having fun, so you can't really knock that. But the fans are kind of criticizing and critiquing certain things. And then you have kind of some pros who are, some are good at taking that and some are bad at taking that. And then occasionally you have to give, I do believe in the concept, you have to give some pros a break that, if they get, ragged on every single day for a month about kind of the most inane shit, then they're going to eventually lose their temper. And I mean, that, it's a shame to see, but it's not terribly surprising to see. And we have an environment now where people can do that and not lose their jobs. So of course you're going to see some of that. You're going to see that popping off. I talked to a few pros here and there. I more are finding me, which is slightly unnerving in certain ways. But the advice I give people is like, hey, make 2 accounts. Have your pro account. Do what you can. Try and be professional, and try and be jokey. I mean, you don't have to be this robot where you're just promoting your book and nothing else. I think sometimes I see fans asking for that, like, you should never talk about anything but your comic and promote your comic. Well, yeah, okay, back down a little bit, bucko. You need to at least have some kind of personality. But at the same time, maybe you do need an account. And I say this as somebody who has one. Me. This is me. I've got a shop account. I've got this account. This account. I try and be nice and even-handed as much as I can. But every now and then I probably pop off more than I should. And, but I'm anonymous. So it's not going to then come and hit the business and impact me. But by the same token, I'm going to grow my followers very, very, very small. I actually didn't ever intend to get the followers I have now. I thought, I don't know why I have them, honestly, but it's just have that balance in life and take responsibility when you do something wrong, and you'll earn a lot of fans and you'll get a lot of good praise. I got way off track there. I would start rambling.
Oh, that's fine, because I mean, really, you're boiling it down the way it's supposed to be. You have these people that, for whatever reason, a lot of the time I think they want to go create. They've seen what happens. Like, some people can goad creators into calling them a liar, messing with them out of the blue. Not like, if there's one thing you mention somebody, you want to start something, that's one thing. Like, I'm talking about a creator to somebody else. But there's some people that realize, hey, if I get under this creator's skin, they start saying stuff to me, whether it's like, oh, fuck off, go to hell, whatever, and then I can make a video about that, and I can say, hey, look at this creator not being professional, da 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 da, and it doesn't matter. It's like, well, see, they shouldn't let that get under skin, because I was just seeing how, like, it's like, like, whatever reason, and it's like, I try to treat people how I want to be treated as well. It's like it's very simple, very you know, old fashioned, but it's like I try not to go out of my way to mess with people. Sometimes I do. It's like unfortunate. Like I'll see something, say something, whatever. Like like maybe like maybe feel a little bad about that, and I'll delete it.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's you look at somebody like I think Eric Larson is a good example because you see his Twitter feed and you see what he's about, and at this point, I think anybody coming in, if you think you're going to get this calm, even-handed, not snarky response, you're going to the wrong guy. I mean, Larson's been this way forever. Not long before Twitter. His little debates he used to do with Peter David and some of that stuff way back in the day. He's always been this way. You open up his comic. It used to be pretty lighthearted and kind of random. He's taken a turn to attract a new audience because he wants to get his numbers up. It isn't
softcore or hardcore. Actually, hardcore.
Pretty hard.
Oh God, I thought it was bad. I have not looked at the entire issue because somebody put up 2 or 3 page scans, and I was like, oh, it's probably not that bad. And I was like, kind of in the past, because Wizard back in the day, Wizard had offensive content within Savage Dragon. It's like, oh, a homosexual kiss, and this is like this is middling. And then it showed like Dragon behind that Alex, one of his girlfriends, Alex, like doggy style. And there's a couple other stuff, and I was like, it's probably that bad, whatever, because now they blow everything up out of proportion. That's until I saw. I was like, that's Japanese. Like there's like
we're into hentai territory now. Yeah.
It's. Oof.
Yeah, no, he's blowing women across the room with the power of his dick, and I mean, but it's like, so you look at but it's, and he's free to do it. Of course, he's free to do whatever he wants, and I get why he's doing it. His sales were kind of stagnant. Savage Dragon is a very long-running title, and he deserves a lot of praise for that, for keeping it going, where pretty much everyone else has not. And he's trying something new. So good on him. Try something new. Do anything you want to do. Maybe a tiny bit more warning to the retailers. I read a lot, but I know a lot of people do not. So I know that the first couple issues when he took this turn surprised a few people in a bad way. But it's who he is, what he is, and so you can like it or not like it, and it's perfectly okay to not like his personality because lots of people don't. But if you go onto his Twitter and you start kind of randomly baiting him to see if he'll be professional to you, you already know the answer to that. The answer is he won't. He's being himself. So I do dislike the kind of what I would say phony outrage of it. Can you believe he said this? Yes. Who doesn't believe this? I mean, look at his comic. Look at what he's written for the last 10 years. Of course I can believe he's making this joke about Easter. I mean, good Lord, of course. And why are you be outraged about it? But really, I mean, I guess I don't understand outrage in general. I don't terribly understand it when the pros do it. I don't understand when the fans do it. I definitely understand disappointment. I'm disappointed by a lot of titles and comics. I'm disappointed by, as I said, kind of the lack of villains and some of the things that are going on. I'm disappointed by this stuff too. But outraged, I mean, you really have to wonder what's going on. I mean, I don't know. It's sad to see some of the things happening that are happening in comics. No doubt about it. There are still plenty of good comics out to read. They're too expensive. The help that we're getting from the publishers and definitely distributors not there. But things will happen. But I think some of these controversies feel just so manufactured on both sides, from the fans and the pros, that it's like, is this just about getting attention? Is it just about getting hits? Because I guess I don't have enough energy. I'm censoring myself as I'm talking. I don't have enough energy to care this much, and it's always been my disconnect with some of the people who do make videos. It's like when you're on video number 40 about Mark Waid being crazy, I guess, I mean, I need like some label on the video to say there's some new content in here you haven't heard before. There's some new revelation.
Mark Waid kicked my dog.
Yeah, I mean, Waid, some of the stuff Waid does is unprofessional. Again, this is not new news. It's been this way for decades. He's always been kind of a more And he has that
Prickish.
reputation.
He's been prickish. That's who he
Yeah.
is. But it's like, if you're surprised about that, well, guess what? The sun rises in the east. It's like, that kind of stuff. It's like they act this. Oh, these people and their faux outrage. Oh, I'm outraged. A professional isn't professional. Like, well, professional is just a word. It's about, it's what you
Yeah.
do. And like, surprise, like someone like Eric Larson or anything. The guy and a bunch of other people said, "Screw you, Marvel and DC. We're going to go do our own thing." If you're a professional, you just toe the line and eat the shit they hand you.
Yeah.
We're making money off of your T-shirts and your art. You're not going to see none of it. You already get paid for the pages. Don't worry about it. You're not going to see any back end.
It's very odd. And so it's hard. I try to give my feelings on things. I've backed away from a little bit. I don't want to be this backseat driver guy who's constantly telling people what to do and other things. Nobody's listened to it anyway, so that's fine. But
I do.
well, I mean, in a
you're my cult leader, man. You tell me to drink the Kool-Aid, I'll do it.
no. But I'll kind of bring up the other drama that happened over the last 3 weeks that Christ has been way too much attention on. And I'll take it from this perspective, and I think this will equally piss off both sides. So, the Jawbreakers Indiegogo book, there's just some facts that we can lay out. So, first of all, that was a lot of money and a lot of attention the guy got for that, and good on him. So, if there's one part that you can really say and kind of pinpoint that is good, is whether you agree with how he got there or not, his marketing approach worked. And this is a lesson, as as a lot of pros like to say, you're not, what do you know about the industry? A lot of phony data. How dare you tell somebody in the industry how the industry works? Well, the marketing approach used for that Indiegogo project was successful. You bring in that kind of money in that amount of time, hats off to you. You did a good job. I mean, that, a lot of it was built on outrage, and I don't think that's sustainable, but who cares? That is not my problem. I'm not getting the money, so do what you want. While that is true, the sad part to me, and it is actually sad to me because I do want to see more indie titles succeed. I want to see more books out there. I want to see more people getting their ideas out. The sad part is the story, the money got raised, a publisher got contacted, Antarctic came in, was going to publish a book. Did they do enough due diligence on what they were getting into in terms of the drama between both sides? Clearly not, but Dunn has a long-standing reputation of having very little internet presence and understanding. So it's not a shock to me that this caught them by surprise. When the announcement was made, there was an immediate kind of insane reaction from a lot of people. And definitely pros came in, definitely some of the people made a big deal about the comic shops that were rebelling. First of all, very few of them were. Like, really very few of them were. And the ones that were, they bitch every week. I mean, some of you have access to those Facebook groups. Some of you have those. I mean, like a week earlier, it was Brian Woods is a creepy guy. And the week before that, it was somebody else. I mean, it's like, this is not new news. These are shops that always have some kind of thing going on. And so I saw it coming that morning, and some of the people watching maybe were there too. And the morning kind of this hit, there was this aggressive backlash from the DNC, the guy himself, and a lot of the fans, where they're like, suddenly tweets were going out like crazy about these guys are trying to censor us, and screw these guys. And there are a lot of very angry, outraged comments. And it was like watching a train wreck because. And I predicted, I think that morning, it's like, you are going to kill your publishing deal. And it's not fair because, a lot of factors kill the publishing deal. You can't lay it all on the one guy.
Or Wade or anything like that. Which, yeah. I mean, that right there, the whole,
yeah.
If any publisher has been in the business that long with Antarctic Press, to let one person, Mark Wade, it's like, all these companies do it. It's like they all, like, if there's controversy, they back down. Like, I go back to like Opie and Anthony with the whole, Anthony Camilla was being harassed by prostitutes 2 a.m. in Times Square because he had his camera and he was using the night lens and taking photos, and she got offended by that and got in his face, and he got upset because all this and that, and then so he went on a tirade on Twitter and they fired him. Oh, companies don't stand behind people. Oh, duh. big surprise, and they got nobody's going to do nothing about it because nobody has stones, but whatever.
Yeah, you people, and this is the kind of the point I was trying to make, which maybe was a little obtuse. It was on the Kaepernick kind of analogy. It's like these companies, especially publishing companies, especially in this business, are they're controversy adverse, particularly for new titles. And that sounds like a weird thing to say because we hear a lot about how Marvel's doing this or that, and there's little controversies. But those are tiny little fires in the grand scheme of things. If you're a small publisher and you're taking on a new book and you're going to publish it, and then suddenly all hell breaks loose and you get 1,000 emails and mentions, and you log into Twitter, it's the case where you go to the bathroom, you come back, you look it down at your phone, and it's like Twitter has 2,000 notifications in the little bubble there. That is death for a project, whatever that outrage is. And I'm not trying to give people a playbook, by the way, of how to cancel books in the future, but that very few things survive that path. The Pervert survived that path with Image because Image is protected from a lot of that, and frankly, because the noise about that book was not that big. It seems
and also Eric Stevenson isn't even on Twitter.
Sure.
And so I think it's him, his group. Which, I mean, you say, well, you probably picture what his group, people that choose the submissions look like. But guess what? All these people that made the videos on Pervert made it more well known. They did the marketing for them. We talked about that before.
Yeah,
they became a part of the problem. Well, if I don't say nothing, then they win. They already won. It's what you do next.
No, they deserve a royalty check, hands down. They deserve a royalty check for that book because they definitely helped sell it. And it's not if you're upset by something, say nothing. I mean, that's not a strategy. But just know. So it was sad because I watched this guy, for whatever else is going on, execute a pretty good marketing plan, have a book go on. You got some. I felt bad for Smith and Malin in that process, sort of. But they get something kind of to the finish line, and then watch as it goes in reverse the next day. And that was heartbreaking to watch because it was, you want more titles getting pushed out. You want more of this stuff getting pushed out. And instead, this kind of, nobody could control themselves, and it became this giant tempest. And so today, will the book come out? Yes, they're doing their own thing, everything else. But I'll tell you, the road gets very hard when you're trying to produce and publish yourself. It's not an easy job, and you need a lot of partners. It's not the 3 guys in a garage cannot do this. You got to rely on others, and you don't want to create controversies for no reason. Now, the controversies definitely help put some extra money into that project. That is true, but I put it this way: I would have far more rather seen the money get raised, the publishing deal happened, the outrage videos start to then taper off. The counter argument would be if there was fewer outrage videos, maybe there would be less attention and less titles. I don't know if that's true or not, but I would have rather seen this book go out to market, get published normally, have a follow-up a few months later, and have another creator out there putting stuff in the market. That would have been a good outcome. And now I think, they will try that with their publishing house. Maybe it'll succeed, maybe it won't. Smith is a smart guy and knows a lot of people and everything else, but it's hard to sustain businesses on rage. It can be done, but it's extremely, you're just stacking the deck against you. You're making it a lot harder than it needs to be.
Yeah, exactly, because you're dealing with, I'm not like if I'm in any camp, I'm like, that's a poor way to do it. That's the cheat code of doing it, whatever. But I can't say I'm not going to deny 1 + 1 = 2. The fact that he's good at marketing, he's good at raising money. Drawing comics, not so much. Writing comics, probably not. It's probably going to be a mediocre book. That's the thing. It's like everybody's like making such a big deal over that. It's, well, it's okay. So 6,000 people, a little over 6,000. I think 6,221 at last count. That's for the Indiegogo campaign. So like everybody's like, oh, that's such a great thing. It's like, that's only 6,000 people.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, but it's OGN, so it's not a single. It ain't a floppy. It's OGN. I'm seeing a lot of them collect dust on shelves, and you say what you will about floppies. Oh, floppies or whatever, but floppies, like, you may not pick up that floppy. But, hey, I'm gonna pick that up and trade. You actually know about it, like a lot of these other things. Like, Atomic Robo, for that example, they could have gone a long time ago from doing individual issues just to put out Atomic Robo and whatever the fighting scientist at Tesla died, Atomic Robo and and Atomic, and then just done that and foregone the single issues, but they didn't.
It's funny. It'll be a tough road, but this is okay. This is why I kind of said at the beginning, it's their strategy to run. If this is the way they want to go do it, again, I don't know. I don't want to sound selfish here, but to me, it's what's going to get books and things moved in the shop. I think for me, it's healthier if I've got more titles. It's healthier if I've got more diverse. And I don't mean that in the way that it's often discussed on Twitter, but I just mean different categories. I want monster books. I want horror books. I want action books. I want superhero books. I want drama books. I want all these things because there are all these audiences. And I want to see smart marketing campaigns. I want to see well-edited books, and I want to see creators getting paid more money. And I want to see all these things because it creates a healthy ecosystem. This may work out for a few people, and the book itself may get in the hands and make some people happy, and that's great if it does. Again, not taking anything away from the accomplishment, other than it was painful to watch it self-destruct, and it definitely, some of the things that have been alleged are wrong. The stories going out are wrong, but 2 years from now, 3 years from now, I guess actually I'm going to contradict myself. I was going to say 2 or 3 years from now, nobody will remember this. There will be a book out or not, and there will be more books out or not, and there will be things going on, and what will it all have meant? Or actually, I think this is worse. Or who knows? Maybe 2 years from now there will be, SJW Mark Wade is at it again videos, and if there is,
there still will be. They can't. It's like here's the thing: like after Gamergate,
yeah,
which there's still videos like that coming out. And they still get views. It's like nothing ever really dies, especially on the internet. Nothing really dies, but people they'll seek out like, oh, I need to be angry because maybe they're on pills, maybe they don't have the other emotions are not in check. It's like, whatever. I don't know. It's like, like judging a whole swath of people. Well, maybe they want to know about whatever. But this first campaign, I'm like, if the second campaign raises more money and the third raises even more than that, then that's a true, like, okay, you know what? The people have spoken. I don't agree with what the people say, but whatever. People have spoken.
Mm-hmm.
The first time, it's like, I asked, like, if you ask me, like, well, why do you not like this? Or why do you like this? And not if I could usually tell you why. It's like, maybe it's, oh, it looks great, sounds great, concept wise, like with comics and stuff. And I asked some people, like, well, why'd you pick the book up? Well, and there was a few, and granted, it probably isn't everyone, but there's probably a few. It's like, oh, this will trigger some SJWs and upset them. It's like, it's a mediocre book, but I just know it's going to upset some people. I got to stand up for my boy, or something like that. Mm. It's like, I give money to books that look interesting. I don't waste my money on stuff just so I could upset somebody. It's like, how pathetic are you that your reason of buying something, it's like, well, that's your reason, that's freedom, and this and that. But it's like, but that reason of like, I just want to upset somebody. It's like, that's how miserable you are. Yeah. Your life is such shit that you boil down like, I'm gonna spend hard-earned money. You won't buy. You're like, I want good comic books, but I want to piss somebody off more.
No, I mean, look, I think there's a lot of ways. I talk to people, and there's a definite some people who chat with me, and it's where I really want to understand. There's a couple guys who come and talk to me every now and then, and it's they bring the idea that we are in the middle of an outright war, an ideological war between SJW and I'm honestly not sure what the other side is called. It's never really anti-SJW. Yeah, we'll just go there. And that, there are people out trying to control us and all the rest. And I hear that perspective, and there's elements to it that are true-ish for me, in the sense that, it is true that standards have lowered at publishers, and, people get in who maybe are not equipped to do the job they're there to do. And there is rampant nepotism, so they bring in their friends who are also not equipped to do the job that they're there to do. And there's not enough money in the industry for people to get paid, really good rates, so that a lot of the really strong creators just go into other fields because they want to get cash. So though that is a problem. Now, is that an SJW problem? I mean, maybe in the sense that some of these guys have a similar ideology, I guess, but what a long roundabout way to have the fight. I mean, so we're gonna have a cultural battle here with comics of people who are paid, frankly, very low, where there's kind of some bumbling nepotism going on. It's just that seems like a very weird place to have a culture war. Now, if that's where we want to have it, I mean, okay, that's fine. I just don't know what's going to get accomplished in the end. And I'm not saying this from a defeatist attitude. I'm saying it from a, what do you want? And I try and say this to people on Twitter and in the shop or wherever I meet them. Is when I get somebody who's really arguing about something, it's what outcome are you going for? Do you want cheaper comics, better comics, comics with more boobs? I don't know exactly what you're after. And then if you're after those things, then, what's the best way to fight for it? And if people have determined, hey, comics are too expensive, the stories aren't good, there's not passion, I want something I can really love, and I'm not finding it. So the answer to that is I'm going to go call Gail Simone a dumpster fire. Like, okay, that's weird. I'm sorry, that's just strange.
It is. Well, you're right, because I mean, like, I look at it this way: like, you don't, like, war on terror, war on crime, war on drugs. These wars will never end. It's like that line from The Wire. It's like you can't call this a war because wars end.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Like, there is an end goal. Like, what is the end goal? Oh, well, War One, we got to make either the Austro-Hungarian Empire completely wipe them out or make them surrender. Make them sue for peace. World War II, you got to make the Japanese surrender or the Germans, everything like that. There is a goal. North, south, whatever. There is a goal. There has to be an end goal in mind. You can't just fight a war because the only reason people fight wars that don't end is to line their pockets. We're on drugs, we're on crime, we're on terror. It's like, well, who's like it's like boil it down. We're on drugs, pharmaceutical companies. We're on crime. You have like there's these people that non-lethal law enforcement gear that never actually goes to market. That kind of stuff, which is weird. But then you have stuff like the we're on terror. It's like, Raytheon, hey, we got these drones that bomb people from the sky, like Hellfire missiles to wedding parties and stuff like that. So when it comes to the war on comics, this entertainment escapist media, as Major Tom 331 says, it's an escapist hobby. That right there, who's winning? It's the victim bucks, it's the outrage bucks on either side. Oh my God, Richards, fighting the good fight against the SJWs. Throw money at him. Oh my God, this creator who is who's pansexual, genderqueer, something, whatever. Throw money at them because they're being harassed. It's like people are lining their pockets either way. What's suffering? The medium itself, the current industry. The medium will never die, but the industry itself, and it hurts people. It hurts you. It hurts customers. It hurts people. Like, I just want an entertaining comic that doesn't break the bank. My goal at the end of the day, I want something that I'm willing to pay a little extra if it's coming from a creator-owned person. It's like person's paying for that, the printing themselves, doing it themselves. Writer, artist, colorist, letter, all that stuff. It's like a one-stop shop. If it is, quality interior art, quality stories, variety, not diversity, variety. I want science fiction. I want cyberpunk. I want space operas. I want straight up horror with no humor. I want some little humorous horror, kind of like Return of the Living Dead a little bit. I want superhero stuff that isn't just, hey, it's Spider-Man if he was the son of Superman, like stuff like that. Like Invincible, but whatever. I want tons of content, and when it's just, hey, it's the same old kind of Spider-Man book, or it's the same old kind of Iron Man book, or it's the same old kind of whatever. It's Superman, somebody destroyed Krypton yet again. Who might it be? That kind of stuff. It's a concept that's been done to death. And it's retreading. And it's like the lack of creativity. But when true creativity rises up, it's like it's forgotten until years later. So, oh, you remember that? They're like, at the time, nobody appreciates it. They say they want creative and originality, but what they really mean, they want good comics, they want creativity, and like they just want their old nostalgic Spider-Man books back or X-Men.
And it's where, and maybe this is a good thing to start. And I wish maybe I'll try and get rally a bunch of people to do this. What do you want in comics? What would you love to see happen? Like, and even if they're tiny things, like I would like to see Barry Windsor Smith doing some comics again.
Oh God, it is funny you say that because right behind me, I have a Dasher in Africa, I have
Mhm.
the Young Gods and Friends, and I have Freebooters, and they never released Paradox Man because Dark Horse screwed over Barry Windsor Smith, told him they would market him, and look at like they did the same thing for other creators over there. I think that's one of the. I'm not saying this is a case. I heard this at a convention from a guy that I will not name, but he was mentioning how Art Adams got screwed by Dark Horse over Monkey Man and O'Brien.
100% true, by the way. That
Yeah,
is 100% true.
and they screwed over another and the same writer who told me that, they said he screwed him over, and that's why he jumped over to Image, because they were screwing him over. And it's like they'll get you. It's like these people that should have gone to Image and done their thing, they went over to Dark Horse because Dark Horse feet in the pot because they were like a little unsure, and in doing so they got screwed. I mean, it's really unfortunate, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's like Barry Windsor Smith is so nobody knows about him. These people,
Oh,
well, they get their comics from Richard, or or these like new comics, or maybe somebody that talks about, I'll talk about Alterna, but Nexus and American Flag and anything by Barry Windsor Smith, like the life death stories for X-Men. That's not even X-Men books. It's so damn good,
yeah.
It's better than that.
Somebody in the chat had said, that I'm not the X-Men line should be a really hot line. And, from everything that's going, assuming the Fox deals comes through, it's going to be part of Marvel's next phase of how they kind of treat that and handle it and bring it up and everything else. So there, you'll see this corporate push. I do believe, without a shadow of a doubt, if you've looked at the new Black Panther issue, people are saying, oh, CB is sitting over Coates' shoulder, helping him write that. I don't think so. I think Disney corporate is sitting over Marvel's shoulder, help writing that book. That book felt very better and sold okay, but it's very much a corporate driven kind of book. So the X-Men, so somebody mentioned in the chat that the X-Men isn't great now, and it's not. The line feels, again, just kind of there. It's just kind of moving along. There's nothing really to get super excited about. It's not horrible. It's not good. It's like X-Men Blue. You got the time displaced X-Men and doing stuff with Polaris, and you got Emma Frost over there and Havoc, and you just got stuff going on. But it's you read it, it's like, well, this wasn't awful. This wasn't good. I will have forgotten it by dinner. And so X-Men, what would be cool? Hey, what would be cool is if you commission Art Adams to do an annual. Why not?
That'd be great.
Put Barry Windsor Smith on a 2-issue little mini storyline, and have a little event where something happens. Go ahead and you're paying Claremont. Have him come in and write a 12-issue run of something. Why not? I mean, go for it. And those sound like nostalgic because those are obviously creators from the past, but they're ones that people associate with X-Men, and they associate with kind of these iconic moments and so why not? Let's try some of that. You can still have Tom Taylor doing some X-Men Red over here. Sure, that title sells pretty well, so go nuts. You can have Gambit fanfic over there for that audience. I mean, do whatever you're going to do, but what I want to see in comics is not whatever all the SJWs run out of comics. I don't know what that means. What I do know is that if Art Adams did an X-Men annual, it would sell really good and people would love it, including me. And if the DC's New Age of Heroes, if the big creators and artists that they promoted to being on those titles actually stayed on those titles, that would be nice too.
Yeah, everybody's jumped ship, haven't they? Romita Jr. is leaving. Right. Zurcher's coming in. Rockford, he's gone for a bit, possibly forever from the book. Who knows? It's like they have been in for 4 issues and then they're gone. What is this? It's like they can't, like I remember when people would actually stay on the books, and like Braylon was mentioning that the other day. It's like, yeah, these people would actually stay, or like Braylon and some other people I think were mentioning that, but they would stay on books. Now it's like, oh, you got like a couple issues here and they're gone. What's even the point? It's like those filler books where you have like 4 or 5 different pencilers working on the same book. It's like, who cares at this point? They can't even be dedicated to the project.
And so that's where, if you're taking a positivity spin, I think you got 2 ways of looking at it. So you're somebody doing a video, and you've got a big audience, let's see, you're the DNC guy, and you've got whatever he's got now, 70,000 plus people watching his videos, and he's got a lot of fans, and he's definitely got a megaphone in the sense that if he says something, gets repeated. Every now and then, one of my posts gets retweeted by him. I don't pay a lot of attention to who's liking and tweeting what I do, and so I'll see a post, and suddenly it's got like 100 likes, and I'm like, well, how the hell did this happen? Then okay, it got retweeted. And so how awesome would it be, really, if, we had one less video about some jackass thing Mark Waid has done, or, an analysis on Eternity Girl #3. Eternity Girl is a title. It sells what it sells. It overperformed in stores from what we were expecting. What we were expecting was nothing. So it overperformed that and sold. But it's a blip in terms of sales and revenue and everything else. And I think the argument that I hear sometimes, the ones I just can't get on board with, is if you don't rail against that stuff, then pretty soon all the titles will be Eternity Girl. And I'm telling you, that will never happen. The comic does not sell that well. It doesn't sell as well as the worst X-Men title. It's not like a year from now, if some people don't tweet enough at Mags, that suddenly she'll be running Marvel. That's not going to happen. Sales does matter in the end. So how cool would it be with that audience if we just got some videos like, hey, here's a campaign to get Barry Windsor Smith back for a couple books. Here's a campaign to get Art Adams, and don't mention whatever the hell, any random editor, Alana Smith. Just leave those people out of the video. Just, hey, Art Adams is a good creator. Let's hit up his timeline. Let's hit up the editors attached to his stuff, and let's really push hard to say, here, look, listen to this loud audience with a megaphone. Hey, CB, at Marvel, all the rest of that stuff. This is what we're demanding. Let's have this. Because if you're Marvel or you're Disney or you're CB or you're any of these people, there is not much you can do with, hey, Mark Waid called Antarctic Press. I mean, that's just a situation you can't wade into. No pun intended. Maybe there's legal stuff involved, maybe not. I don't know, but I should use a different example. If you're Tamara Bonvillain and you're a colorist and you said some mean things on Twitter and you want to, retweet CB at that saying, what are you doing with your employees? What do you expect CB to do? And I'm saying that honestly. Do you expect him to walk down some hallway and go into Tamara's office? She doesn't work in a Marvel build. This is a complete hilarious fantasy scenario, and just fire her, say, you're being mean on Twitter, get out. That's not going to happen. For a million reasons, that's not going to happen. So you can continue. We've tried it now. We've seen people try it for more than a year, kind of this constant onslaught. I don't know if it's helping anything. It's definitely provided visibility to it. It's definitely funded some projects. But at the same time, where's my Art Adams X-Men book? Where's my Barry Windsor Smith book? I would like that. I could sell it. I would love to read it. That's what I would like. And that's where I think there are a lot of good creators. Claremont, bring him back. I'll throw one more example. So John Byrne is an interesting example because a lot of people have brought him up in recent because of the new She-Hulk design. Mm-hmm. And it's fine. You can like the new She-Hulk design or not design, whatever. And John Byrne drew a very sexy She-Hulk, and in our memories, it's all we remember that very fondly. The title didn't sell that well, but that was a good She-Hulk. I like that book. But Byrne as a personality, Byrne is not on Twitter, but if he was, there would be videos about him every other day, because he's like Eric Larson ×5. And I say this with due respect, the guy's a great creator, but he is nuts. I mean, go look at his stuff. He says completely angry things at fans. And so I see all these posts like, God, Byrne wouldn't stand for this. Bring Byrne back. Where's this? Let's have
they don't
Byrne
know
back.
him because they don't know him.
Exactly. They don't know him at all. I mean, yeah, bring him back and let's see him on Twitter. And you think it would be, head over to his boards. There's archives still of his stuff. I mean, it is anyway, far more than what people complain about. I can't think of another creator currently on, anything anybody complained about slot for. Byrne is 5x that. And so
it's like Byrne is like the Cthulhu of comic writers. You don't want to summon him. You think these other elder gods are bad. These other shogoths and what have you. Do not summon Byrne. Byrne will ruin you.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I think there's but still, sure. If Marvel announced today there's going to be a new She-Hulk series and Byrne's going to be doing it, and it's going to be a throwback to what he did, awesome. If you said Byrne was going to do the new Fantastic Four, writing and drawing it, awesome. People line up, people would buy that any day. So my comment to a lot of the stuff on Twitter, which often doesn't come across well in the post, is I see all this outrage and this anger and this, we've got to stop this, and we got to go to war with this, all the rest. And my guess my question is, and then what? And what are we going for? Chuck Dixon writes all the DC books. Is that what we're going for? I mean, that might be okay, I guess, but there's a lot of anger. There's not a lot of outcome, and I mean, without that, I don't know really what the point of the fight is. And again, there's been some guys. There's a guy I can't remember his name, but he posts mostly videos in response rather than types, and it's always charming to me because he's in some tropical place.
Edwin Boyette.
Yeah, yeah. And I look at his videos and I see he creeps people out. I notice when he, no, not me. No, I'm not.
The angle, I totally get because sometimes the angle, it's kind of like, who summons the all powerful Oz? It's like, oh, back up, dude.
Well, I watch him reply to pros, and I think he's smarter than me because I'm very wordy, clearly. And I struggle to, cram everything into one tweet. And usually I don't. I do 10 when I could only do one. But he's mastered it. He's like, I'll just make a video and then I'll say everything I want. So that's clever. And I see him respond to pros and other things. I see the pro like, whoa, who's this crazy guy? But I always look at those videos. I'm like, man, he's living a good life. He's got palm trees behind him. He seems happy, he's smiling.
Hawaii, man. Hawaii for you. Like, he's in Hawaii 5-0. Hawaii 5-0 in it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. But I think, a lot of people have told me, no, I'm not getting it. There's a big culture war here. We have to fight it. We have to do everything else. And I hear it. I want to understand. I really try. But I kind of always go back to, there's a lot of great creators who are sitting on the shelf. There's a lot of random people who are doing comics who seem to not care about it at all. There's titles that are being published that don't matter. I mean, and it's tragic because, there's somebody in that book. There's one of the 12, 14 people that had their hands doing something in that title who is like going home at night and telling the husband or the wife, hey, what do you do today? I made a comic. This has been my dream. And they're, really excited. And then out come, they work so hard and out comes, Hawkeye number 8. And it's like, a couple thousand people bought it and okay. And 10 years from now, it's not going to be Watchmen. It's not going to be.
It's not going to be. It's not going to even be a West Coast Avengers. It's not going to be that. Which, like that right there, I crap on that because like I remember reading because a lot of it was just like it never really clicked with me at the time because you have to. It really that is a book you have to get other previous Avengers stuff to really understand. You really got to understand a lot of the. It's kind of like an ancillary book. It's like if you've read all this other stuff, you can read that. That's for me. That's how I approached it. But it's like at least I know Force works.
I should. Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, I will say again for the record, Edwin is I am charmed by him. He's a good guy. He's smart. Nothing. All my jokes aside, I like that guy. Unlike a lot of these people, I think almost all of them have a good point. Most of them are not insane. I think some of them definitely use, what they're getting for their own advantage. There's one very weird guy who hates me desperately for some reason. I don't really get it. Who just can't stand anything to do. Whatever. You're all out there. You're doing your thing. But wouldn't it be nice? Can we all in this crazy comic community, whether you're SGW, not, whatever side you're on, wouldn't it be awesome to see Burn on a monthly book again? Wouldn't it be great to see Adam?
I'd be fine with like whether it be a miniseries or a special or something like that. Like one of those. I know the whole original the OGNs don't really sell that well. Like, it's also hard to market, hard to stock and everything. But whether it be a monthly and then just like write it out, just like whether it be a 12-issue arc, 4-issue, 6-issue, whatever you think you might be able to actually accomplish. I mean, that would be just great. I mean, don't pad it out. Just let him do his thing. I was joking with Braylon in the chat. It's like, Byrne writing She-Hulk with Frank Cho doing the art. I'm like, oh my god, because Byrne, his art, even when he's doing Next Men like 25 years ago, was a little. It's rough to say the least. And also, but he's another thing. The problem with a lot of that is they make more money doing commissions and doing private stuff than they actually do. Like Marvel would wants to pay him, or even DC for that matter. They don't have it hurts. It hurts to see like, oh my god, you're so good and you still have talent and still can do this stuff, but you'd rather do your private commissions and make more money doing that than you would,
Oh, absolutely. And so Can we, and this is, I've not been drinking, but it'll sound like it with this. Can we not get Mags and it's going to screw Tim Doyle, but some of these people, this collection of kind of, the people on that side, get Wade there, get Slot, get Bonvillain, get Alana Smith, get all these personalities, and then get the fans, get Meyer and Yellow Flash, all these different various people, and can everybody rally around one idea of let's pay people more so we can get better content? I mean, that fans, pros alike, can't we all agree on that? Let's get more money into this system. Let's get more money into the comics. So, maybe we can afford to bring some of these guys in and do good comics. And women, there's amazing creators, both genders, all the rest out there who, like you say, they're doing game art, they're doing commissions. There's a couple comic creators who do kind of corporate drawings for places like Boeing, because they'll make in one kind of presentation more money doing that than a year's worth of comics. And that's horrible.
Yeah, like Chris Weston. I follow Chris Weston on Twitter. He does movie posters, and these things are better than the actual movie posters when they actually put movies out. Like he did three of them in a row. There was John Carpenter's Thing, Big Trouble in Little China, and Escape from New York. And he I don't know what he makes with that, but I just know he does mainly that. He'll do some like 2000 AD strips and stuff like that, but he did it was a Superman story that was featured with Rob Williams writing it. It was when they were doing that Superman digital comic. They were putting out the collections of it, like the Adventures of Superman, whatever it was. And it was I haven't read as much as I love All-Star Superman, this was actually, to me, I wish this was a All-Star Superman length, because it had everything from Bizarro as the President of the United States. You had the giant Jimmy Olsen turtle monster. You had Brainiac, all that stuff. It's like that's what we need, more stuff like that. But I'm pretty sure he makes more money doing his private commissions and posters and for these companies doing that, but then he would working for DC or Marvel.
Yeah, there's more money needs to come into the system that will fix a lot of the problems. And I think it's the place where the industry's at. People ask, is the industry healthy? It's not. It is clearly not. There are definitely some new avenues. Scholastic's doing its thing. We've talked about all these different areas of stuff going on. Some of the comparisons to the 90s, forget about the quality of the content, but just titles selling better then than now. I had a good chat with the Comic-Con guys and some different analysis of those numbers. It's a little bit misleading. A lot of comics were getting pulped back then. The numbers were higher, but they were not selling through. So the industry wasn't truly as healthy as it seems, because a lot of those titles are getting just ridiculously discounted when they were being shipped as well. So it's not one-to-one. But the big unhealthy factor right now in the industry is there's not a sustainable income for a lot of the people working in it, and they deserve more. The industry, the fans deserve more. And at the same time, you do have ridiculous amounts of cash being driven by movies and media and toys, and the Marvel juggernaut is not stopping anytime soon for films. And I think that Remender is going to have some success with what he's doing. The Amazon stuff that's coming is going to pump crazy amounts of money into media some way. That's got to make its way into the comics.
And I was curious about that, because from what I understand, like mainly from you, but what I'm guessing, what I'm inferring is, because of pretty much just what you said, it was like on Twitter, it's like they already have Comixology, they have Twitch, they have Amazon Prime, they have Amazon, all their streaming stuff, so they move into original content, you get paid pretty good off the top of from Amazon. You make content they could possibly turn into TVs, movies, what have you. Like hell, they could do a Twitch series if they wanted. I don't know. And they could do so many possibilities. And even though that right there, it's good, and hooking up with retailers, like making them de facto Amazon stores, which would be a better fit than anything else. And hopefully kicking Diamond to the curb and just letting that fade away, because I can't see any positivity of keeping Diamond around. They screw things up. They shit the bed on a regular basis. They overship, undership, don't ship at all, and they hurt stores. And it's like, well, you have to deal with us, and that's it.
Yeah, the only positive, and I'm very obviously very extreme on Diamond. I've been always, but the only thing better than Diamond, or the only thing worse than Diamond, would be nobody. And I mean, so that's where they currently sit in the stance of they're only better than nothing, and so that's how they managed to survive. I mean, Amazon. So I've speculated heavily about what's going on. There's a couple of facts we know. We know that they are coming out with an announcement. We know. I think it's. I don't think I'm breaking any confidences by saying that Amazon was a heavy bidder to get Miller's imprint, Miller World,
Mhm.
which ultimately went to Image because of the deal that was signed. Amazon won first rights for a lot of the media. I don't know if that's been heavily reported. I'm now worrying that somebody told me that in confidence, but whatever. Um, so we know that Amazon attempted to play in that space, and a lot of people have kind of. I got some pretty nasty DMs around. I'm crazy because why would Amazon, $1 billion company, want to get into the failing comic industry? And my answer is they're not. They're getting into the media industry. That's the whole point. They're looking at the $1 billion films that are coming out, and they are trying to kickstart a media business. Their streaming service is okay, but it hasn't. It still is a fraction of Netflix in a lot of ways. They've got to make some moves, and so if you're in the media business and you're trying to come out with some original content, some movies, you're going to look at what's selling and what, again, just take one look at the top 10 films of the last year, and comics dominates it pretty heavily. So you're going to get in that business. You can't go buy content from Marvel or DC. Maybe you can try and get a deal done with DC. I don't know. But really what you want to do is you want to control that for yourself, and you want to have that IP that's yours, just like Marvel does with Disney. And so that's kind of the game that they're playing. So that they're going to announce something. There's a lot of kind of rumors out. I speculated on what's coming. I do believe that we're going to get a shared universe. We're going to get all the rest. I do know some creators have been contacted, and I know that some pay rates have gone out, and the pay rates that have gone out have been, quite high. Now, granted, they're signing away everything. I mean, Amazon will own it all, and so maybe there will be some residuals, but probably not. It'll be very much like an old Marvel contract.
Work for hire. Yeah.
Yeah, it's work for hire. But if you're if you're Art Adams, and you're getting a work for hire gig that is top dollar, yeah, I mean, you're going to take some of that. It is the industry is one, and we had it. It was healthier before, where the rates were higher. You had creators go to Marvel, go to DC, get paid fairly well, do their thing. They didn't own any of the IP. They'd get a name and a reputation. 5, 10 years went by to the point that they could kind of survive on their own, and then they'd go to Image and they do their thing there, and succeed or fail. And that used to be that was a healthy system. And the problem is the feeder system is broken because the money is just not there with Marvel and DC. So especially Marvel. So you don't have that influx of talent that's then going to one day pop over to Image. And we're starting to see it now, where the quality of titles coming out with Image is just, it's not where it was 5 years ago. You do not have the big star people coming over Image, and the reason is there's not the big stars. There's not the rising star people. People are getting gigs with Miller because he pays them well, and there's some back end for him. And so we need that source. And my hope and some of my speculation is Amazon could do some of that. We'll see. But I do think that Amazon will be interesting, and if true that they're going to start to produce some stuff and use it to kickstart their digital, which would be smart. And as a store owner, digital doesn't scare me. What scares me is an industry dying. So digital can still feed a good local comic shop industry. So here's hoping. I know some of the at least two of the creators that were contacted are classic names from the past. So maybe I'll get my dream, and we will see Adams and Smith and some of these other guys on some books. Unfortunately, not X-Men books, but some new IP, and that would be better than nothing. Better than them sitting on the shelf for sure.
That right there, like that's the biggest problem right there. You have a lot of these people that they're still alive, they're still creative, they still have a potential in them. Like Andy Asenti, Daredevil. I mean, like everybody other than Frank Miller, that right there, that is, I'd have to say that's my second favorite, Daredevil run. I know a lot of people love Bendis and even the Brubaker stuff and even the current Soul. It, I read the Bendis books. I wasn't enjoying them, but everybody else was around me at the time. I was like, all right, maybe I'm not seeing it right now. Maybe eventually I will. No, I never did, and I hated myself for it because I wasted, like $100 a year or more
Mhm.
on the Bendis Daredevil stuff. And these people are still around. They have a lot of potential to create. I'm surprised like Amazon didn't just buy up whatever the other IP like Valiant, or I know Valiant's already been bought up by something else, but like Dark Horse. Like I mean, take the pity out of Dark Horse. Let's go ahead and snatch that from them. Whatever they got left, like a Mask and what the X and Ghost and whatever like that stuff. Go ahead and snatch that from them.
It's kind of, I think, well, now we are completely speculating here, but I mean, a lot of the titles, if you're going to buy a company, it only makes sense really if the IP is really valuable. There's some real meat there. And the problem is, I mean, there's not. Dark Horse just doesn't have enough. They've got some, there's just not enough there. And the only other reason you'd want to buy one is if you wanted the distribution network, you wanted the publisher network, you want the relationships with Diamond, you wanted this kind of structure. But Amazon doesn't need it. There's no point to that. So they're purely buying IP. And I'm sure the decision comes down, do you start from scratch and own it from the beginning, or do you try and kind of dust off some stuff? And I'm sure it was looked at again. I think there was that attempt with Miller. It just, if you're them and you've got the money and you're going to take a try at this, I mean, original IP is probably the way to go, especially if you can then tailor it from day one to maybe an actor you have in your stable. So you design the character to look like somebody you're going to have them play from the very beginning. I mean, there's things you can do. I don't know. We'll see in a couple of weeks. Maybe it comes out and it's like, hey, we're going to run discounts on graphic novels. And it's like, sad trombone noise. That was nothing. But there's definitely some movement going on. I mean, like I said, the facts I can tell you is that there are creators that have been contacted. They did make a bid for something in the past, and there is a definite desire to do something with this digital distribution network because Amazon sees it as an important vehicle to them. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'd like to see something come out of it because I know they have Create Space, they have Prime, they have all this other stuff. They have, they recently picked up The Expanse, which is like I love Battlestar Galactica, so when I start watching Expanse, I'm like very much like Battlestar Galactica as far as seriousness, not as not as goofy and some other stuff like that. And and if they can keep it that quality, I hated the Tick remake they did, the one up here, Peter Serafinowicz. I hated that thing. That was the worst thing I've ever seen. It hurt me. It was that bad. It was so bad. But it's like if they could do something like they could do amazing films. They can do it like to me. They better quality than Netflix has just after Stranger Things season 2 and after Narcos season 3 and after Bright and pretty much everything. I was like, I'm done. They're spending my money. They're in the red. They're spending so much money on this other stuff. They're gonna be. It doesn't matter. It's like there's no good content coming out. Like I'll be watching not really good movies. I got The Wire. I got Sopranos. I got Deadwood on Prime. I'm like, I'm good. I got all the good shows. And Netflix, not so much. That's matter of taste, matter of opinion. But to touch back on one little thing, this whole war, this comics entertainment war. They won. The people, all for diversity and certain stuff like that. They won. They're already in there. To get them out, you'll have to rip the guts out of the industry, and the industry ain't that healthy to begin with, like you said. And if we could get these people out easily, I don't want Richard and his ilk and the rest of these people that this is like they're just as bad in my opinion because they have no real like. If you could get in charge, if you were in charge, it's like I know you wouldn't want to be. You'd be like the George Washington. Oh, I don't want to be in charge. I'm just a simple man, But no, that's the people you want in charge. The people that don't want that power. Me, I'd take it, and I'd probably literally corrupt me.
Oh no, it's. I mean, the industry has a million voices in it. I mean, that's kind of some of the weird. The arguments that play out are very strange. I mean, it is. You do have, you have some creators who are doing stuff with Scholastic who are selling tons and tons of books. I mean, really. An amazing level of getting comics out there, and that's a genre. It's a niche. Again, I'm tired. I'm not. My names are completely shot. But the woman who writes and makes Smile and some of these kids that are aimed at kind of young adult girls, that person's a powerhouse. They're making money. They're publishing stuff. It's a healthy genre, and it's got a clear path. Nobody ever Arena anyway. Um, that person has figured that audience out, and it's healthy and it's good and it helps shops and it helps Scholastic, it helps books, it helps people get into comics. Nothing wrong with that. Don't touch it. Nobody really ever comments on that on Twitter, but even though that's a success story. On the other hand, you have Marvel that's just kind of lost its way. The arguments are just, I'm never sure. Like I said before, I'm not sure what the point is. What do you want to have happen? Do you want to go run Marvel? Do you want to, fire all the mean people on Twitter and replace them with who? With,
newsletters. The way they describe it, like, you should only talk about your book and this. That's a newsletter. I hate newsletters like that.
Yeah.
Then, like,
yeah.
if I have subscribed to two, one I regret and one I'm looking forward to. I'm actually looking because I actually like the person involved. They're actually positive. They're a comics professional. They used to work for Marvel, and they're doing their own thing. And I'm just happy to see them doing their thing, and I'm loving what I'm seeing. And they're actually something touching upon Americana. But yeah, it's to see that happen. There's better ways. There's other alternatives. Just complaining about something, not offering any solutions. That's what you offer. You're saying, oh, you don't know why you're so popular, because you offer a solution. You're a growing influence because solutions and ideas, are they the right answer all the time? Who knows? But they're at least something. And that's the thing. They're something, and they're educated. They're not, you need to just get good. clap, 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 clap.
I think people need to realize people are dicks, and all different types. There's plenty of them. And so, Twitter as a medium, it's like AOL Messenger 20 years ago. You have people that do not know how to handle critique and criticism. It doesn't make it right when they flame out and start yelling at people or want to talk about, Trump for every single day, every month. That's quite boring. Keep doing it, I guess. But what more is there to say about Trump? But it just, what are we fighting for? If it's to make people more professional, great. So if Mags suddenly was very professional, are we all good then? Is the litmus of a healthy industry how Mags acts on her Twitter feed? No. If the books are selling what they're selling now, it really doesn't matter whether she's the biggest troll on Twitter or the biggest saint on Twitter. The book's not selling. That's the problem in the industry. So, if the X-Men are all doing under 50,000 copies a month, hey, maybe it's time to pony up some cash and get Art Adams to come in and do an issue that will pop sales. Maybe we need to build up some villains that people actually watch. Maybe it's time to, drag Mr. Sinister out of Monsters Unleashed and make him an actual villain again. These are things that would probably help spike those numbers up. How crazy or sane Dan Slott is on Twitter, it doesn't really matter. Spider-Man sells well. Amazing Spider-Man does good, healthy numbers. It sells every month, and I rarely see somebody. I see lots of people saying I don't like Slott's portrayal of Peter, and his portrayal of Peter is very uneven. It is odd, but is it one of the top 5 Marvel books that's published in the month? Probably, definitely by sales. Is it what people like? I don't know, but I sure hope we don't just go murder Slott and replace Slott with some random person on Spider-Man. It's going to tank it. That doesn't help anything.
Yeah, don't want to put Slott on that. Take Slott off and then replace him with somebody that just does, oh my God, you won't believe this SJW comic creator did this video. Somebody that does videos like that. Like, people forget, that's kind of how, in a way, Gail Simone complaining about the whole women in fridges and doing stuff like that. These people, it has happened where these people that just complain on the internet, rightfully or wrongly, get gigs.
Yeah, they will.
It's scary. It's scary. this is why I like creator-owned work because I could have, but
Absolutely. Of
it's an interesting time, and I know your time is precious, and we're gonna
course.
go ahead wrap this up, and thank you again for coming on. Thank you those who jumped in the chat, and I agree fully on a lot of the stuff that's been going on there. They
Yeah.
very good crew, very good people coming around, and I think that's because you bring it out in Perch. You're good. Believe the hype, but don't believe it too
No,
much. Keep your
no,
ego in check. Yeah,
no.
that's the good thing. Like I don't know about
It's
that.
all getting creepy. I think I'm starting to get I had somebody in the midst of kind of the flameouts go, "Hey, are you the owner of this store over here?" Kind of poking, and that's like, gosh. I mean, I did this
Look
for a
at this.
reason.
Look at it this way. You keep yourself a sawed-off baseball bat, just off the handle, put a leather strap on
Exactly.
that, or tire thumper. You go to a truck stop, get a tire thumper, piece of fiberglass, you go bonk.
So I'll give you one last funny thing. We got to go. I changed my avatar back to
Oh,
this.
yes, I saw that.
Well, it's better
Everybody's
now.
doing that, and it's disturbing. I hated that.
No, I changed it away, so it's good now. But I had the CalArts poo for like a couple days, like 3 days. What was funny is I had a bunch of people. I'd see them, the little notification. This person's following you. This person following. I had like 20, 30 people follow me after I changed that avatar.
Oh God.
And then I got some of the bizarrest messages like, "You are an asshole. You are not who your avatar is." And I came to the conclusion. I mean, it sounds ridiculous. There are people who I think saw that avatar, thought, "Oh, here's a comic guy, got the CalArts avatar," and then I go to the feed and they're not complaining about Trump. It was the strangest phenomenon of people who came in, paused for a day, saw, "Wow, this guy's not what I thought," and dumped out. It's the fickleness of Twitter. It's just a strange world.
Hey, this guy is even-handed. He's a real problem. That's like, and I will say this, like in closing notes, that past the weekend, the whole Antarctica Press, the meltdown, everything like that. It was like the shit show weekend. There was in the book Max Immortal, the Rick Veitch, and I know they're doing a sequel to it. There's actually a sequel that's come out or it's coming out to Max Immortal, like Kid Max Immortal. And did you ever read that?
I've seen it. I have not read it, which is
It
embarrassing.
is incredible. It's a great. It's basically fictional take on like it's kind of like if Superman was real and like Siegel and Schuster and them getting screwed over by a national comic, national and everything like that back in the day, DC Comics, and Snyder ripped off Max Immortal. You know the sequence in Superman Unchained when that
Oh yeah.
Superman vaporizes the whole Hiroshima. That's actually from the comic Max Immortal. They put Max Immortal inside a tube and then open it up and he vaporizes Hiroshima. So I was like, he ripped that off of a comic nobody's really read. But whatever. It's whatever.
It's
I'm
a
not
weird
gonna like.
deal.
But in the beginning of the comic, there's a quote by Juvenal, the poet, the Roman poet,
Mm-hmm.
Greek poet, and he's the one that "Que custodius ipsos custodius," who watches the Watchmen. But this quote is used out of the shit, the gold. That weekend, I put my stuff up. It's like, you know what? Here's the stuff I make, and I did a lot of sales the following week. I was like, yeah. I was like, hey, what's bad for everybody else is shit for everybody else is good for me. So I can't complain too much. It's like, hey, put your stuff out there. So hey, I pat myself on the back, what you can say. And with that, we're going to end the stream, folks. Thank you again for stopping by. And if you missed this, you'll be able to watch it again, or if you jumped in late. So thank you again, and see you later.